At the start of the spiritual way, the soul usually has the conscious experience of being illumined with its own light through the action of grace. But as it advances further in its struggle to attain theology, grace works its mysteries within the soul for the most part without its knowledge. Grace acts in these two ways so that it may first set us rejoicing on the path of contemplation, calling us from ignorance to spiritual knowledge, and so that in the midst of our struggle, it may then keep this knowledge free from arrogance. On the one hand, we need to be somewhat saddened by feeling ourselves abandoned, so that we become more humble and submit to the glory of the Lord. On the other hand, we need to be gladdened at the right time through being lifted up by hope. For just as great sadness brings the soul to despair and loss of faith, so great joy incites it to presumption. I am speaking of those who are still beginners. Midway between illumination and abandonment lies the experience of trial, and midway between sadness and joy lies hope. This is why the psalmist says, "I waited patiently for the Lord, and he heard me." Psalm chapter 40, verse 1. And again, "According to the multitude of the sufferings in my heart, thy blessings have gladdened my soul." Psalms chapter 94, verse 19. When the door of the steam baths is continually left open, the heat inside rapidly escapes through it. Likewise, the soul, in its desire to say many things, dissipates its remembrance of God through the door of speech, even though everything it says may be good. Thereafter, the intellect, though lacking appropriate ideas, pours out a welter of confused thoughts to anyone it meets, as it no longer has the Holy Spirit to keep its understanding free from fantasy. Ideas of value always shun verbosity, being foreign to confusion and fantasy. Timely silence, then, is precious, for it is nothing less than the mother of the wisest thoughts. Spiritual knowledge teaches us that at the outset, the soul, in pursuit of theology, is troubled by many passions, above all by anger and hatred. This happens to it not so much because the demons are arousing these passions, as because it is making progress. So long as the soul is worldly minded, it remains unmoved and untroubled, however much it sees people trampling justice underfoot. Preoccupied with its own desires, it pays no attention to the justice of God. When, however, because of its disdain for this world and its love for God, it begins to rise above its passions, it cannot bear, even in its dreams, to see justice set it not. It becomes infuriated with evildoers and remains angry until it sees the violators of justice forced to make amends. This, then, is why it hates the unjust and loves the just. The eye of the soul cannot be led astray when its veil, by which I mean the body, is refined to near transparency through self-control. Nevertheless, it is much better to lament the insensitivity of the unjust than to hate them, for even should they deserve our hatred, it is senseless for a soul which loves God to be disturbed by hatred, since when hatred is present in the soul, spiritual knowledge is paralyzed. The theologian whose soul is gladdened and kindled by the oracles of God comes, when the time is ripe, to the realm of dispassion. For it is written, "The oracles of the Lord are pure, as silver when tried in fire and purged of earth." Psalm chapter 12, verse 6. The Gnostic, for his part, rooted in his direct experience of spiritual knowledge, is established above the passions. The theologian, if he humbles himself, may also savor the experience of spiritual knowledge, while the Gnostic, if he acquires faultless discrimination, may by degrees attain the virtue of theological contemplation. These two gifts, theology and gnosis, never occur in all their fullness in the same person. But theologian and Gnostic each marvel at what the other enjoys to a greater degree, so that humility and desire for holiness increase in both of them. That is why the Apostle says, "For to one is given by the Spirit the principle of wisdom, to another the principle of spiritual knowledge by the same Spirit." 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8. When a person is in a state of natural well-being, he sings the Psalms with a full voice and prefers to pray out loud. But when he is energized by the Holy Spirit with gladness and completely at peace, he sings and prays in the heart alone. The first condition is accompanied by a delusory joy, the second by spiritual tears, and thereafter by a delight that loves stillness. For the remembrance of God, keeping its fervor because the voice is restrained, enables the heart to have thoughts that bring tears and are peaceful. In this way, with tears, we sow seeds of prayer in the earth of the heart, hoping to reap the harvest in joy. Psalms chapter 126, verse 5. But when we are weighed down by deep despondency, we should for a while sing psalms out loud, raising our voice with joyful expectation until the thick mist is dissolved by the warmth of song.